The channels of communication plays a big deal. There's a factor to it as you go through. You want to anticipate who your primary audience are. Are they really a reader or a listener? Is there a personal or professional relationship? Those play big roles. How much is known about the topic? What's their education level, beliefs, culture, attitudes? Will the reaction be neutral, positive, or negative? All those really determine a lot as to how we're going to go about in communicating with them. If they're already a positive audience, you will write it one way. If they don't want to hear your message, you're going to really phrase your communication totally differently as you go through the process. You'll also have a secondary audience that sometimes will step up. So how are they different from the primary? And do you need to supply more background information to bring them up to speed? And do you have to reshape the message for a secondary audience? So pay attention to your process as you go through. But here is always the biggest thing. What's in it for me? I was working one time and my boss was a vice chancellor, and he sat there and he says, David, I'm really frustrated by a lot of these communications happening around here. You need to have a training program for this. I said, why me? I'm just listening to you. And he says, because you really know this stuff. I says, okay, I rolled my eyes a little bit. Maybe I do. And what he said is people copy me on things and I don't know what they want me to do with it. Sometimes they send them back an email with a question mark on it because they're copying me primarily because of my role. I'm Vice Chancellor Administrative Services over here. So that being said, how do I go about dealing with this? Are they just this for information for me? They don't tell me that. Do they want me to act in it? So we actually developed a big workshop on it, and we trained all the administrators in the college system as to how to communicate. Whenever you want somebody to sit down, FYI means for your information, so you know about it, or can you help me by taking action in the following? A lot of times, what's in it for me, or why is it being sent to me as you go through? A lot of this, what's in it for me and the different contexts of it, you want to really sit down and that plays a role in the factors affecting your channel choice as you go through. The importance of it, the amount and speed of feedback. If you're going to take the time out to send a formal written memo, okay, which is very formal as you go through, it's much slower than it's going to be if you texted somebody or made a phone call and had human communication. Oh my goodness. Okay. Or the need for permanent record. A lot of times you do send a memo because you want a permanent record to keep in the personnel file. The degree of formality is a big thing. Also, if it's confidential and sensitive, you may want to send your credit card to somebody on a straight email because they may get out as somebody else sees it. Okay. You may want to be careful too about not copying everybody. One time I pulled into a parking space. I typically get to work early, so I start work at 8, but I pulled in and it was 7:17, and I'll never forget that. I just pulled in a parking space and my cell phone rings. The IT director got to work early because he had this fixation on making fabulous coffee. It was a good coffee. Okay, but that being said, he says, we got a problem. I said, what's that? He says, one of the college presidents sent out an email and it's highly confidential and it's about a personnel issue and it's sent to you and the chancellor, and they accidentally copied 108 other administrators in the district. I says, okay, kill it, kill the message, pull it out as best you can. He says, I'm already working on it, but the problem is it went past the actual college email and it's hitting some third-party things. 3 minutes later, the college president calls. He's in tears on the phone because he figured out what he did in the process. And by the time it was all done, it took us 3 hours to extract the messages, and some of that still got out. We're fortunate we didn't get sued over the content that he had on there because it wasn't very kind in the process. If it's confidential and sensitive, you double check that thing before you push that button send. Otherwise, you can sit down and be in the same boat. If it can't be published on the front page of your local newspaper, you better maybe not send it at all. Maybe a phone call is better. And look at the receiver's preference and the technical expertise. You really want to sit down and you go through a ranking level as to richest to leanest. The richest way to communicate is always face-to-face. Oh, wait a minute. Remember the study? 93% of it, when you don't understand the context, you sit down and interpret it through nonverbal. If you see the person, you can see what they're doing with their hands and their face and different aspects of it. And you can get a much better aspect when it's face-to-face as you go through. Then the telephone also is another thing. You can hear the intonation, but maybe even better is a video chat as you go through. But sometimes the screen is very small. So the video chatting is good. Email's okay. Email should really be reserved more for routine messages and for information than for sending things that are harsh or critical in the process. So be careful about email. It is an informational channel rather than an opinion channel or a heavy-duty decision-making channel as you go through. Be careful about it. Instant instant messaging is good for short online, and then really as you go through, a letter becomes very formal. Okay, and then a memo to a group. Blogging also is out there, and writing a report or a wiki. I've used wikis for over a decade, and that really is an excellent form of communication because you can change the messages, but then go back and see when somebody changed something. You can go back and change the history of it as well in the process. So a letter is very formal. A memo is also formal because they're hard to extract, because especially when it's in writing. Blogging is a good way to reach a much wider audience. And sometimes you create a report. It depends on the depth of the information you want to deliver on it, and make certain everybody that reads it reads the whole thing. And if it's too long, they won't do that as you go through. Pay attention to your communication, all the factors that are involved, but especially the channels, making certain that the audience that you're going to really is grasping what's being sent and why it's being sent, and be cautious on the communication channel to make sure you're using the best way to carry your message with the most importance to them in their own medium. Take care.